Language Foundations Vocabulary Flashcards, helping you achieve understanding.
The act of removing. He had surgery for the removal of a malignancy. Dismissal from office. The act of removing. Law, the cessation of cohabitation of man and wife, either by mutual agreement or under a court order. Coming apart. The distance between things. Fragile items require separation and cushioning. Sorting one thing from others. The separation of wheat from chaff. The act of dividing or disconnecting. The social act of separating or parting company. The separation of church and state. The space where a division or parting occurs. He hid in the separation between walls. The state of lacking unity. The termination of employment, by resignation or dismissal. Official notice that you have been fired from your job. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. An enclosed space. A bag made of paper or plastic for holding customers' purchases. Make as a net profit. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. Plunder, a town, after capture. The barbarians sacked Rome. Terminate the employment of. Discharge from an office or position. A hanging bed of canvas or rope netting, usually suspended between two trees, swings easily. A loose-fitting dress hanging straight from the shoulders without a waist. The quantity contained in a sack. A woman's full loose hip-length jacket. Any of various light dry strong white wine from Spain and Canary Islands, including sherry. Put in a sack. The grocer sacked the onions. The plundering of a place by an army or mob, usually involves destruction and slaughter. The sack of Rome. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. Coarse fabric used for bags or sacks. Official notice that you have been fired from your job. A judgment disposing of the matter without a trial. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. Permission to go. The sending away of someone. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. The act of firing weapons or artillery at an enemy. The act of discharging a gun. The act of setting something on fire. Remove, cargo, people, etc., from and leave. Electrical conduction through a gas in an applied electric field. Free from obligations or duties. Go off or discharge. Eliminate, a substance. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. Pronounce not guilty of criminal charges. Cause to go off. Release from military service. A substance that is emitted or released. Any of several bodily processes by which substances go out of the body. The discharge of pus. The act of discharging a gun. The act of venting. The pouring forth of a fluid. Become empty or void of its content. A formal written statement of relinquishment. Complete or carry out. Discharge one's duties. Pour forth or release. Discharge liquids. Remove the charge from. The sudden giving off of energy. The act of liberating someone or something. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. The attempt to achieve equal rights or status. She worked for women's liberation. Part with a possession or right. Let something fall or spill from a container. Music. The act or manner of terminating a musical phrase or tone. A device that when pressed will release part of a mechanism. Activity that frees or expresses creative energy or emotion. The act of liberating someone or something. Grant freedom to. Free from confinement. Make assets available. Release the holdings in the dictator's bank account. Release, as from one's grip. Release, gas or energy, as a result of a chemical reaction or physical decomposition. A legal document evidencing the discharge of a debt or obligation. The act of allowing a fluid to escape. Prepare an issue for public distribution or sale. Eliminate a substance. The plant releases a gas. The termination of someone's employment, leaving them free to depart. Make information available for publication. Release the list with the names of the prisoners. An announcement distributed to members of the press in order to supplement or replace an oral presentation. Euphemistic expressions for death. Generate and separate from cells or bodily fluids. Release a hormone into the bloodstream. A formal written statement of relinquishment. A process that liberates or discharges something. There was a sudden release of oxygen. Merchandise issued for sale or public showing, especially a record or film. A new release from the London Symphony Orchestra. Forced removal from a position of advantage. Forced removal from a position of advantage. The act of removing or getting rid of something. The bodily process of discharging waste matter. Analysis of a problem into alternative possibilities followed by the systematic rejection of unacceptable alternatives. The murder of a competitor. The act of removing an unknown mathematical quantity by combining equations. The act of removing the contents of something. The bodily process of discharging waste matter. The act of removing the contents of something. The act of evacuating. Leaving a place in an orderly fashion, especially for protection. The act of removing the bowels or viscera. The act of cutting so as to cause the viscera to protrude. Altering something, as a legislative act or a statement, in such a manner as to reduce its value. The adoption of their amendments would have amounted to an evisceration of the act. Surgical removal of an organ, or the contents of an organ, from a patient. Properties attributable to your ancestry. The action of taking out something, especially using effort or force. The dentist gave her a local anesthetic prior to the extraction. The process of obtaining something from a mixture or compound by chemical or physical or mechanical means. The removal of covering. The act of forcing out someone or something. The act of removing or getting rid of something. Wash off soap or remaining dirt. The removal of soap with clean water in the final stage of washing. Clean with some chemical process. Rinse one's mouth and throat with mouthwash. A liquid preparation used on wet hair to give it a tint. The act of giving a light tint to the hair. Washing lightly without soap. The removal of soap with clean water in the final stage of washing. Reading or glancing through quickly. The act of brushing against while passing. Failure to declare income in order to avoid paying taxes on it. The act of removing floating material from the surface of a liquid. The removal of covering. The act of discovering something. The removal of covering. The act of removing the contents of something. A method of birth control in which coitus is initiated but the penis is deliberately withdrawn before ejaculation. Avoiding emotional involvement. A retraction of a previously held position. The termination of drug taking. Formal separation from an alliance or federation. The act of ceasing to participate in an activity. The act of taking out money or other capital. The act of withdrawing. The withdrawal of French troops from Vietnam. The act of withdrawing blood, tumors, etc. The nurse was expert at the withdrawal of blood. The act of cutting something off. Shedding of flowers and leaves and fruit following formation of scar tissue in a plant. Preoccupation with something to the exclusion of all else. The process of formulating general concepts by abstracting common properties of instances. A general concept formed by extracting common features from specific examples. A concept or idea not associated with any specific instance. An abstract painting. The act of withdrawing or removing something. Spontaneous removal or casting off of a body part, as the tail of a lizard or claw of a lobster, especially when the organism is injured or under attack. The removal of covering.
Become our student and get access to effective and free educational materials. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to become a part of our growing YouTube community and to learn English effectively.